Incredible moment revealed. General saves black woman handcuffed in court with life-changing badge. Mariah clenched her jaw, the sound of the gavel echoing like a death knell in the small courtroom. Handcuffed, she felt the cold metal biting into her wrists, a cruel reminder of her struggle. All around her, the murmurs of judgment filled the air, cutting through her thoughts like daggers. The crowd stared, some with disdain, others with a mix of curiosity and pity. She had never imagined her life would come to this, sitting in a courtroom, accused of being a criminal simply because of a late rent payment due to unexpected medical bills. Her heart raced as images of her 6-year-old daughter Zoe flashed through her mind. The two of them in their cramped apartment, Zoe's giggles echoing off the walls, the smell of Mariah's famous pancakes filling the air on Sunday mornings. Mariah had put her dreams on hold for the sake of her little girl. Every dollar she earned at the diner was a lifeline, kept together by the fragile thread of hope. But here she was, reduced to a spectacle for people who didn't know her, who didn't understand the struggles single mothers faced every day. Before Mariah could fully process the prosecutor's words about possible maximum sentences, a figure entered from the back. General Davis, the local war hero, stood tall and commanding, silver hair gleaming under the fluorescent lights. It was as if he illuminated the courtroom with a promise of justice. Everyone turned to him, their whispers silenced, as he walked straight toward the front, his presence demanding respect. "Your Honor," he began, his voice strong yet calm. "I've known this woman for years. She is not a criminal, she is a mother trying to care for her daughter. Let us look at the bigger picture." His words resonated like a beacon of light piercing through darkness. He shared stories of his own struggles, of the people he had seen fall through the cracks of a system that promised opportunity but failed to deliver. Each word painted a picture of systemic failure, of how poverty did not make someone a criminal. As he spoke, murmurs of support began to ripple through the crowd. Mariah's heart skipped, a warmth spread through her body, battling the cold of her handcuffs. She could almost hear Zoe's laughter in her ear, feel the small hand that held hers during tear-filled nights. There was hope. The tide was turning, shifting perceptions like sand carried by the wind. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The atmosphere crackled with energy, the audience alive with whispers of solidarity. But just as hope surged in Mariah's chest, a sharp voice cut through, reminding her of the grime of prejudice and ignorance. Would they see her struggle, or would they judge her based on their biases? Just then, General Davis raised his badge high, a shimmering emblem that represented honor and hope. "This is a symbol of our commitment to justice. But what good is it if we don't believe in second chances?" His words echoed in the chamber, compelling everyone present to re-examine their beliefs. Mariah held her breath, the culmination of momentary silence stretching long. Would her community rally around her? Or would the weight of ingrained biases claim her? The stakes were higher than ever. As she stared into the faces of old neighbors, her heart pounded wildly. She could sense the critical moment hanging in the air, an irreplaceable chance for redemption. Could this be the turning point for her life? Would they choose to lift her up, or let her fall, lost beneath their own judgments? The courtroom held its breath. Faces twisted in curiosity. Could they dare hope? Mariah could hardly remember how to breathe. She felt a well of emotions rising within her, each wave crashing heavier than the last. Would they see her, really see her? Would General Davis's courage be enough to drown out the judgment that loomed like a dark cloud above her? "I think everyone here can agree," the general continued, addressing the audience with sincerity, "that what is happening to Mariah is a reflection of us as a community. We cannot afford to close our eyes to those struggling around us. A late payment doesn't define this woman. Her love for her daughter does." Whispers morphed into murmurs of contemplation. Mariah caught the eye of an elderly woman from her neighborhood, someone who used to wave to her from across the street. The woman nodded subtly, and a flicker of hope ignited within Mariah. Maybe, just maybe, the voices of support could drown out the ones filled with disdain. As General Davis shared more about Mariah's situation, describing the long hours she worked and the sacrifices she made, it was as if the weight of the world began to lift. The crowd grew restless, hearts softening, minds shifting. Mariah's throat tightened as she fought back tears, not wanting her vulnerability to show too openly. But in that moment, she felt a spark of audacity within her. "Your Honor," she called out, her voice trembling but firm, "I didn't choose this struggle. I wanted to be the best mother I could for Zoe. I've tried so hard, and I'm scared. I can't let her down." The room fell silent, her raw honesty echoing against the walls like the plaintive call of a wounded bird. Conversation sunk deep within the souls of the onlookers, who had perhaps never considered how interconnected their lives were. A young man in the audience, someone Mariah recognized from the park where Zoe played, stood up. "We know Mariah. She is the one who always smiles, even when things are tough. We can help her." His voice rang out, fueling optimism with every syllable. Other voices joined in, neighbors, friends, even strangers. Expressions turned from judgment to understanding, from indifference to compassion. Mariah's heart soared. Hope was starting to blossom like spring flowers breaking through winter's frost. Yet, just as Mariah began to sense the shift, a shadow crossed the room. The prosecutor, a fierce woman with cold eyes, stood up, unwilling to cede control. "Your Honor, those words do not change the law. We have rules for a reason. Deviation from those rules leads to chaos." The weight of her authority hung heavy in the air. Mariah's pulse quickened as the crowd turned tense again, divided between support for her and the rigid stance of the law. Would this moment slip away like grains of sand, lost in the rush of judgment? A quiet voice broke through the tension. "But what about compassion? What is justice without mercy?" It was the elderly woman from the back, her voice steady and unwavering. "Sometimes, we must choose to believe in the goodness of people." As the judge listened intently, a palpable shift took place. The air thickened with possibility, the outcome wavering on the edge of uncertainty. Mariah fought for breath, acutely aware that everything was poised to change. The room held its breath alongside her, waiting. Would the gavel come down hard, sealing her fate away from her daughter? Or would the voice of compassion rise above the chaos that categorically defined justice? The tension hung like a pendulum, and in that moment, all eyes focused on the judge, waiting for the decision that could change everything. Would they choose hope? Would they choose her? The judge, delicately balancing her own turmoil, glanced around the courtroom, her fingers lightly drumming on the desk. Moments dragged as if time had decided to suspend itself. Mariah's heart raced. Was it her own plea, or the courage of the general and the unity of her community that had ignited something deeper within those gray walls? "Ms. Mariah Anderson," the judge finally spoke, her voice cutting through the thick silence, "this court recognizes the complexities woven into your life. However, this court must also uphold the law." Mariah's heart sank. She braced herself for the words that followed, but there was something in the judge's tone that held a glimmer of hope. "Yet we are not defined solely by the law," the judge continued, her gaze penetrating through the rows of anxious faces. "This court does not exist in a vacuum. We exist alongside our community." The room buzzed nervously, the air pulsing with anticipation. Mariah bit her lip as she leaned forward, searching the judge's expressions for hints of favor. With a slow breath, the judge announced, "As such, I am granting you, Mariah, a grace period to get your affairs in order while still holding you accountable for your responsibility towards your daughter." Gasps floated through the crowd, a ripple of disbelief and exultation. Mariah blinked. This wasn't the verdict she had feared. The weight lifted, and for the first time, she dared to hope. "Furthermore," the judge continued, her resolve steady and true, "I encourage the community to support you in these trying times. If they wish, they can collectively offer assistance. We will decide together, based on compassion and unity." Justice does require mercy. A soft applause crept through the courtroom, hesitant at first, then louder as more joined in. The man from the park raised his hands, urging others to join in. Mariah closed her eyes, a wave of gratitude washing over her, tears spilling down her cheeks. She could feel the warmth of those around her, the gentle thrum of community spirit filling the once stifling room. Yet amid this rising tide of support, Mariah's thoughts drifted to Zoe. Would this be enough? Was the kindness of the crowd truly enough to secure a brighter future? Just then, she noticed the prosecutor's face twisted in disbelief, frustration tightening her jaw as she whispered something to her aide. The judge, catching the tumult of emotions swirling in the room, added, "I urge all involved to approach this matter with a collaborative spirit. Ms. Anderson represents more than just her own struggle. She embodies the resilience of all who find themselves in tough situations." Mariah stood tall now, adrenaline surging. "Thank you, Your Honor. I will fight for my daughter. I promise. And I will do everything I can to prove that we are worthy of this second chance." Everyone leaned closer, ready for her next words, her determination infectious. But then the prosecutor interrupted. Her sharp tones sliced through the warmth. "Your Honor, with all due respect, this case is far from over. We have further obligations to ensure that the law is upheld and those who break it face consequences." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Mariah's resolve faltered, her heart pounded louder now, a drumbeat of anxiety. Could she hold on to the hope that had just been kindled? "Tomorrow, we will gather to discuss this further," the judge said, voice firm, her eyes locking onto Mariah's. The news didn't bring conclusion but only more questions. With the crowd in disarray, Mariah took a step back. A whirlwind of emotion surged within her, now more uncertain than ever. How could she grasp the future when obstacles loomed large? Would the community's promise of support hold, or would the specter of the law loom large again, threatening to shatter her newfound hope? The uncertainty wrapped around her like a cold cloak, leaving her shivering. As she stepped out of the courtroom, the glares and whispers of some marked her steps. Mariah felt an unsettling doubt creeping in. The battle was only beginning. Would she be able to navigate this turbulent path? Or would the lingering shadows of the past claim her again? As Mariah stepped into the bright light of day, the warmth held a bitter contrast to the chill of her uncertainties. Whispers followed her like shadows, snippets of conversation spiraling behind her. She could hear the words, "Mother trial," and "community," each a constant reminder of what was at stake. Once outside, she paused, letting the cool breeze whip through her hair, clearing her mind just enough to think of Zoe. The little girl was the beacon guiding Mariah through this storm. Yet, even in the sunlight, doubt clouded her thoughts. This grace period felt like a fragile bridge over a deep, rushing river. One misstep, and everything could wash away. "Mariah!" A familiar voice broke through her reverie. It was David, the general's neighbor who had stood by her side in the courtroom. He hurried over, his face flushed with excitement. "You did it! The judge actually listened to you." I just don't know if it's enough," Mariah stammered, her voice tinged with fear. David shook his head, words tumbling out with urgency. "You need to focus on what comes next. The community is behind you, and we're ready to help. We can organize food, a fundraiser, anything." Tears prickled at the corners of Mariah's eyes. She wanted to believe, but the prosecutor's last words echoed cruelly in her mind. "She's right, it's far from over." "Listen," David said, taking her arm and looking directly into her eyes, "we'll take it one step at a time. Tomorrow's meeting will help clear things up. And whatever happens, you won't be alone." Mariah nodded, feeling a surge of warmth wash over her. For the first time, she sensed the possibility of a lifeline, even if it was just a flicker amid swirling doubts. They decided to head to the park where many had gathered earlier, inspired by the judge's remarks. Children played in the background, innocent laughter floating through the air like a bomb. Mariah watched, her heart aching at the sight of Zoe's friends. She had to get Zoe back. That thought became her anchor. As they reached the park, David began rallying people together. Soon big and small faces surrounded Mariah, smiling and encouraging her. "We believe in you, Mariah!" shouted one of the mothers. The chorus of support washed over her, a wave of solidarity that began to drown out her fears. But then she felt it again, the ripple of concern in the air. The prosecutor, although defeated in court for the moment, was still circling. Mariah caught a glimpse of her near the park's edge, talking intently on her phone, her expression dark. "Who is she talking to?" Mariah whispered to David, suddenly feeling the anxiety creep back. "Can't say," he replied, a frown creasing his brow. "But whatever it is, we need to be ready." She's not letting go easy. Just when doubt began to creep back in, a boy from the crowd stepped forward, clutching a poster he'd made. "This is for you," he exclaimed, holding up a brightly colored piece of paper. It read, "We stand with Mariah." The crowd erupted in cheers, and in that moment, hope rekindled inside her. Yet just as quickly, her heart raced again at the thought of what the prosecutor might unleash next. "Tomorrow could change everything or tear it apart," she muttered, glancing back towards the distant figure of the prosecutor who now appeared to be watching. Something was looming, and she could feel it. Would this community support prove strong enough to weather the coming storm? In that moment, with hope clashing against fear, Mariah understood the true nature of the battle ahead. She couldn't let this chance slip away, nor could she let her community down. And so, standing before the roaring voices of support, she clenched her fists, determination igniting within her. Could she truly navigate this labyrinth of arriving threats? Or was darkness still poised to close in? The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows as Mariah felt the applause start to fade, signaling the moment for something crucial. David took her hand, a solid anchor in the overwhelming sea of thoughts swirling in her mind. "We should gather everyone together and talk," he urged, "focus on the plan." Mariah took a deep breath, rallying her courage. "Yeah, let us do that." With each step, the weight of uncertainty pressed harder against her chest, but she was determined to transform that pressure into action. Once they gathered in a nearby gazebo draped with vibrant local banners, the crowd hushed to listen. Families and friends crowded around, eager faces illuminated by the anticipation of hope. "Listen, everyone," David began, his voice steady and powerful. "Mariah is at the center of a fight that could change everything for her and for us. We need to support her, not just today but in the months ahead." He turned to Mariah, who felt the warmth of his invitation and stepped forward. "Thank you for being here," she said, her voice trembling at first, but gaining strength as she spoke. "This isn't just about Zoe and me. It's about all of us. About keeping each other safe and standing up when it feels like the world is against us." A ripple of agreement stirred in the crowd, nodding heads, murmurs of understanding. One woman, a single mother whose own fight for her child had brought her to the group, stepped forward. "They tried to take my boy once too. I know how hard it can feel. But we found support here, and I'm ready to fight with you." Her words struck a chord, resonating deeply within Mariah. The shared struggles painted a mural of resilience and conviction. "Thank you," Mariah said, her voice steady now. "We need to be ready for anything. The prosecutor will not stop here. We need to plan and make our voices heard. Together." More voices spoke up from the gathering, a chorus of defiance and unity. Someone suggested a candlelight vigil to demonstrate support for families facing similar trials. Others chimed in to organize a meeting with local leaders, bringing awareness to the trials mothers faced. As the ideas flowed, Mariah felt a stir of hope bubbling deep within her. The darkness that had surrounded her began to fray as the light shone through. They were building a force, a community. And in that moment, standing before the crowd, she remembered that she wasn't alone. But as enthusiasm surged, a dark cloud yet loomed on the horizon. Mariah's gaze instinctively drifted toward the distant figure of the prosecutor. She hadn't moved. There was something unsettling about her presence, something patient in her boldness. Mariah shivered as an idea flickered in her mind. Was the prosecutor waiting for the right moment to strike a blow? "Stay vigilant," she whispered to David, feeling an electric tension in the air. "We're not just fighting a battle. We're preparing for a war." Suddenly, a loud commotion erupted from the edge of the park. Mariah's heart raced as she turned to see a group of people rushing into the area. Panic surged through her as they approached the gazebo, one figure leading the charge, a man in uniform, his face etched with urgency. "Hey! Mariah!" he called, his voice cutting through the crowd. "What's going on?" she asked, adrenaline now coursing through her veins. The man, an officer she'd seen in the courtroom but never spoken to, drew closer. "There's been a development regarding the case. We need to talk." Mariah's mind whirled. What could this mean? What kind of news was about to unfold? As the murmurs grew louder around her, she felt the ground beneath her shift. "Is it about Zoe?" she managed to ask, her heart thrumming wildly. The officer took a deep breath, preparing to answer. But just as he began to speak, she heard the prosecutor's voice pierce through the crowd, calling out something that sent a chill up her spine. "Enough of this charade, Mariah. You think you can win this?" As the community shifted nervously, Mariah sensed a storm brewing. Would this news offer a glimmer of hope or plunge her further into despair? Standing there, her thoughts raced as uncertainty wrapped around her like a tightening noose. What would be revealed in the moment ahead? Mariah held her breath, the noise of the crowd fading into a low hum. She looked between the prosecutor and the officer, caught in a web of emotions. The officer's expression was one of grim determination, while the prosecutor wore a smirk that made Mariah's stomach churn. "Just say it," she finally urged, a fever pitch of anxiety breaking through her calm facade. Her community leaned in, intent on every word about to unfold. The officer stepped forward, deftly raising his hand as if to command silence. "Mariah, the evidence we gathered has shifted the case significantly." The words tumbled out, heavy with urgency. Every pair of eyes was locked on him, breaths collectively held. "Evidence?" Mariah echoed, her heart fluttering wildly in her chest. Did that mean what she hoped it did? "What about Zoe? Is she safe?" The officer nodded. "Yes, but we need to act fast. I believe we have enough to challenge the prosecutor's claims that would keep you both in danger." As he spoke, the prosecutor sneered, stepping forward with a confidence that sent a shiver through the crowd. "You think those flimsy accusations will save you? You're deluding yourselves." Her voice dripped with disdain. "The truth is stronger than your little plans." Mariah's fists clenched at her sides. The woman's words slashed through her like a knife. She had felt the strength of her community's resolve moments before. Could she let fear overshadow that? "No," Mariah said, stepping closer to the prosecutor, her voice now steady. "You've underestimated us. This isn't just my fight. We're not backing down." The crowd erupted, their voices rising like a tide. David shouted out encouragement, while the mother from before motioned to the officer. "What do we do?" The officer rallied their momentum. "We need to gather the testimonies we've collected. We can arrange a press conference to expose what's happening here. It's time to shine a light on this injustice." As Mariah looked around, faces of strength and determination met her gaze. A wave of resolve washed over her. She knew they were onto something. There was a power in their unity that even the prosecutor couldn't withstand. "We can bring together more families like ours," Mariah added, excitement igniting her voice. "We'll be a beacon for those who feel alone in their struggles. This isn't just about Zoe anymore, it's about a movement." Another chant rippled through the group, voices raised in unity. "Change. Together. Fight." But then, just when it seemed the tide was turning in their favor, the prosecutor interjected once more. "You all think you can make a wave? Just remember how quickly the tide can turn, and so can the law." A palpable tension hung in the air, the crowd's resolve faltering for just a moment. Mariah's heart raced. They were standing on the precipice of hope, yet beneath it lurked a deep fear of failure. "What are you waiting for?" she shouted back, her voice cutting through the uncertainty. "Are we fighters or quitters?" The crowd roared back, igniting her desperation into a fire of courage. She noticed David's eyes. They shimmered with pride and a fierce commitment. Suddenly, the officer's phone buzzed loudly, drawing everyone's attention. He glanced at the screen, his eyes widening. "We may not have much time," he said, urgency creeping into his tone. "We need to launch this campaign today." Mariah nodded fiercely, adrenaline pumping through her veins. There was an electric charge in the air, a promise of change hanging just out of reach. What would it take to rise against that contemptuous smirk? How could they turn the prosecutor's threats into their own rallying cry? The moment felt fragile yet potent, each breath a step toward the fight ahead. As they began to form a plan, Mariah couldn't shake the unease that gnawed at her. What was waiting for them just beyond this hopeful surge? "Stay close," she whispered to David, determination etched in her features. "We may have hope, but the hardest part is just beginning." Just as they began to solidify their strategy, another shout echoed through the park, a disturbance at the entrance. Fear simmered as they turned to see a new group emerging, breaking through the trees. Who were they? And what did their presence mean for Mariah and the community? The crowd shifted, a wave of shock rolling through them as Mariah's eyes honed in on the newcomers. The sun glinted off the badges clipped to their uniforms. Officers? Or something more sinister? The tension thickened, and Mariah's heart raced as she scanned the faces of those stepping forward. They looked official, and their posture commanded authority. One officer, taller than the rest with a serious expression, waved authoritatively as he approached. With him were several community advocates, familiar faces, and people Mariah had seen in her neighborhood meetings, the ones who knew the truth and wouldn't turn their backs. "Mariah," he called out, urgency threading through his voice. "We have crucial information." The prosecutor sneered, folding her arms tightly against her chest. "What a convenient moment for help," she quipped, her disdain palpable. "But it won't stop your inevitable loss." Mariah's pulse quickened. "What is happening? Who are you?" She wanted to trust them but knew they couldn't all be allies. Still, hope flickered in her chest. The tall officer stepped closer. "We heard about the campaign, the evidence, and we've been monitoring the situation for weeks. We've got your back." He pointed deliberately at the prosecutor. "And we're here to make sure the truth gets out." As he spoke, the crowd began to murmur, a mix of relief and renewed hope. Mariah's eyes met David's. Together, they shared a moment of silent agreement. They were ready to fight this, no matter the odds. "Are we really doing this?" David whispered, eyes glinting with fire. "Yes," Mariah responded with a fierce nod. "It's time to bring everything we have into the light." The official officer, still holding their attention, raised his voice. "We have testimonies from several other families, communities affected like yours. We want to unite that power. We can't let the prosecutor use fear to silence you." The crowd exploded with cheers, their spirits lifting once again. Mariah felt the warmth of her community thrumming around her. One voice, one heartbeat. Could they actually change things? Could they protect Zoe and everyone else vulnerable to the system that held power over them? But then, the prosecutor interrupted with a sharp laugh that sliced through the elation. "You think gathering a few stories will save you? How naive! I have resources, connections, and the law is on my side." Her voice dripped with venom, but Mariah noted a crack in her confidence. The tension grew thicker. Fear and hope danced dangerously close together. "We're not backing down," Mariah shouted, convinced now more than ever. "We have the truth. That matters more than your threats." In that moment, something seemed to shift. The officer beside her clenched his jaw but nodded in agreement. It was though the prosecutor's bravado faltered just a fraction. Mariah could sense it as the community rallied behind her, refusing to let fear dictate their course. Before she could gather her thoughts, more shouts erupted from the back of the crowd. The energy changed, a pulse running through them. "What now?" she asked, her voice tight with anticipation. Suddenly, someone from the throng of supporters pushed forward, breathless. "Mariah, they're talking! They don't want to remain silent anymore." Dread sank into her stomach again. "Who?" But the reply came as a chorus of voices broke out, telling their stories, weaving together tales of injustice. Each word was a thread binding them closer, anchoring their resolve. Amid this cacophony, The towering figure of the tall officer rose once more, a beacon in the swirling storm. "We need the press," he shouted, eyes shining with intensity as he faced Mariah. "It's time to take action, to make this public now." A rush of anxiety followed at the thought of the media storm brewing. Mariah felt a knot twist in her stomach yet again. "What if they twist our message?" she asked, pushing her way to the front. But there was no time to hesitate. The crowd's energy pulsed, urging her forward, ready for the next chapter of their fight. They had come too far to let doubts distort their resolve. "Let us do this," she affirmed, her voice a rallying cry. "We'll show them the truth." The community's thunderous chant erupted anew, echoing through the park. And yet, as excitement surged like a tidal wave, Mariah could not ignore the icy grip of uncertainty around her heart. What consequences lay in waiting, hidden in the shadows? As the group rallied to prepare for their press conference, a heavy feeling laced her thoughts. They stood on the verge of a collision with the very system they aimed to challenge. Would they be ready for what came next? And could they stand united against whatever storm awaited them? The air felt electric as Mariah positioned herself at the forefront of the crowd, a pang of nerves jostling with adrenaline. She clutched the microphone, its weight grounding her amidst the swell of voices around her. This was the moment they had been waiting for, and yet a single thought loomed large in her mind. What if it wasn't enough? As the tall officer laid out the plan, her heart hammered. "We'll contact the media and set up a press conference here in the park. Your voices need to be heard, and we need to hold them accountable." His words ignited a fire in the crowd, but Mariah's worry burrowed deeper. "Ready?" David's voice was a quiet beacon. He stepped closer, his hands clasped firmly around hers. "Together, right?" "Together," Mariah whispered back, though doubt shadowed her gaze. The officers moved quickly, setting up equipment among the cheering throngs. Cameras flashed. Microphones adjusted. The energy was palpable, each raised fist a declaration of resistance. But beneath all the fervor lay a deep-seated fear: what if everything fell apart when the cameras were on them? The chatter in the crowd began to rise, punctuated by the pulse of anticipation. Mariah could see familiar faces, old friends, weary neighbors, children clinging to their parents. All gathered, hearts beating as one, each looking for hope, for change. "Remember why we're here," she reminded herself, focusing on their shared purpose. Then came the shout from the back, the voice of a mother: "My son needs justice." The words spread like wildfire, igniting shouts of solidarity. Mariah's heart swelled as she absorbed their stories, the pain woven through their lives. They weren't just speaking for themselves. They were the echo of their community, a collective roar against injustice. But just then, the prosecutor marched up, flanked by her aides, her lips curling in that same contemptuous smile. "Do you really think this will change anything?" she sneered at the group. "A glorified town hall with a media circus? It's all just noise." Anger washed over Mariah, and before she could stop herself, she stepped forward defiantly. "It's more than noise. It's a movement." This drew a surge of applause, but Mariah felt a flicker of uncertainty in the prosecutor's gaze. Was she cracking? The suspect attempted to regain hold. "They'll twist your words. You're just pawns in a game much bigger than you." "No," shouted David, his voice strong beside her. "We're not pawns. We're players now. And we're here to call out the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it is for you." The gathering shifted into a chorus of agreement, voices rising in a heartfelt chant: "We are stronger together." Mariah could feel the weight of the moment bearing down. This was their shot, but what if it only drew more fire? As the press conference began, the first few questions lobbed at her felt like bullets. "How do you respond to accusations that your claims are fabricated?" "I respond with truth," Mariah managed, her voice shaking yet resolute. "We're here because we refuse to be silent any longer. We have the courage to stand up, and the stories to back it up." Click! Cameras flicked and flashed their attention, but shadows loomed large. Voices of dissent rose from the prosecutor's team, battling to undermine their message as stories of fear flew through the air. Every misplaced word felt like a chance to derail everything they had built. Just then, a rustle stirred at the edge of the crowd. Someone was pushing forward, and Mariah squinted through the sea of bodies. A tall man in a crisp suit was approaching, a look of urgency etched across his face. His presence drew the crowd's pulse to a freeze. Who is he? Mariah thought, heart skipping a beat. Was he an ally or another foe? The officer's reassuring voice interrupted her thoughts. Stay focused, he urged. We can weather this storm together. But her instinct told her something significant was about to unfold. Mariah clenched her fists, ready for whatever twist was about to emerge. This wasn't just a fight for her daughter anymore. It was about the entire community. What would this new player bring to the fray? Would it be hope or despair? As the man reached the microphone, the world held its breath, and Mariah wondered, would this be the turning point they'd been waiting for? The tall man stepped to the microphone. The crowd watched as he adjusted his suit, his demeanor a mix of authority and urgency. Mariah held her breath, anxiety coiling tight in her chest. Who was he? Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice clear and commanding, my name is General Morgan. I am here today because I believe in justice as much as you do. I've seen the struggles of communities like yours across this country. I refuse to stand on the sidelines. His words landed like a weighty promise, binding the crowd together. Mariah could feel the atmosphere shift, a tension that crackled like static in the air. She exchanged a glance with David. Was this man really on their side? General Morgan continued, too often, we see people marginalized, their voices silenced. But I'm here to tell you that we're done letting that happen. He paused, scanning the faces in the crowd, his green eyes piercing and sincere. You are not alone. You have an army behind you, and I intend to lead it. Cheers erupted, a wave of hope washing over the crowd. Mariah felt her heart race, but doubt tugged at her. Could this man truly help? She desperately wanted to believe him, but voices of skepticism echoed in her mind. He raised a hand for silence, and the crowd hushed. I have interacted with officials at every level, and I've seen firsthand how fear can silence the very people we are meant to protect. I refuse to let that continue. I will go to the table for you, advocate for you, and help push your stories to the forefront. The prosecutor's face paled, her lips tightening as she shot daggers of disbelief at the general. Mariah watched as the crowd erupted in a frenzy, their cheers creating an anthem of unity. This was what they needed, someone powerful standing alongside them. Who's with me? General Morgan's voice rang out, and hands shot up, fists pumping the air in defiance. Together we'll fight for justice. We are stronger together. Echoed back, the chant gaining strength. But just as feelings of hope surged, Mariah's stomach dropped. Amidst the uproar, a faction began muttering, their voices a low rumble of dissent. Just another politician. They never follow through, one voice scoffed. She turned her gaze to David, who looked equally torn. What if this is just more empty promises? What if he vanishes after the cameras stop rolling? Or what if he's the ally we need? David countered, squeezing her hand. Mariah wanted to believe in change, but the world had taught her to be wary. A moment passed where uncertainty gnawed at her, but the chants of the crowd gripped her thoughts. Listen! The general shouted, raising his voice above the noise. We will approach the media with a united front. The way we present ourselves matters. I need each of you to share your stories. Only then can we make them impossible to ignore. I'm scared, Mariah whispered to David, her vulnerability surfacing. What if they twist our stories? What if, even if they do, we can't go back to silence? We owe it to those who can't speak for themselves, he replied, determination carving his features. Just then, an argument broke out at the back of the crowd. A figure stormed forward, eyes blazing. Mariah's heart sank. This wasn't the time for divisions. Stop! She yelled, adrenaline surging as she pushed through the crowd. Not now. We need to stand united. This is for those we love, for our future. Gasps filled the air. General Morgan noticed her pleas and turned his gaze towards Mariah. Yes. That's exactly the spirit we need. Each voice matters. But we need to hold that message close. Shall we? As the crowd rallied, a decision hung in the air, a spark igniting within Mariah. Maybe this was the moment they had dreamed of, or maybe it was the beginning of an even greater battle. With anticipation knotting her gut, she locked eyes with the general, daring to hope for what might come next. Would they stand divided, or would unity shape their fight for justice? As the debate roared on, a new voice emerged from the crowd, rising above the noise, and with it, the stakes surged even higher. Who would step forward next? And what would they reveal? As the crowd surged with a mix of hope and uncertainty, Mariah's heart beat wildly in her chest. General Morgan had ignited something deep within them, yet unease still lingered in the shadows. This was more than just a fight for her family. It was a stand against a system that had long held its grip on so many, and it all rested on the fragile thread of community spirit. The energy pulsed, the chants of "we are stronger together," harmonizing with the wishes for change. Mariah stepped back, needing to take a deep breath while looking out at the faces around her. She could see the older woman from the neighborhood, her hands gripping the worn fabric of her purse, knuckles white with determination. There was the father with his small child on his shoulders, who sported a grin that hid years of struggle and worry. Together! Mariah shouted, the word a lifeline flung into the collectively anxious air. This isn't just for me. It's for our children, for every family who feels invisible. The crowd erupted, voices melding into a single roar of support. The tension between General Morgan and the prosecutor seemed to hang like a storm cloud, threatening to unleash at any moment. But Mariah felt a shift. We are not alone, she repeated, words filled with conviction. There was strength in their numbers, stories interwoven like threads in a tapestry, each one fragile, each one powerful. Suddenly, from the back, a woman pushed forward, tears streaming down her face. Mariah! My dad walked out on us when things got tough, and I don't want my son to think that's okay. You're fighting for him too. The murmurs of agreement swept through the crowd like wildfire. This was at the moment of transformation that could rally everyone together. Now is our time! Mariah cried out, feeling the ground beneath her vibrate with fervor. Let us put a face to this struggle. If they want to paint us as criminals, let us show them we're warriors. Her words were a rallying cry, and the crowd roared back. General Morgan stepped forward again, his eyes fierce. Staying silent protects no one. We will be visible. We'll hold a rally that brings everyone forward. We'll share our stories with the media, and we won't back down. The crowd's cheers echoed through the park, but Mariah felt a knot in her stomach as the weight of the moment pressed down. Were they ready for the backlash? She looked at David, his face a blend of excitement and concern. This is isn't it? He whispered. We're going all in. Yet together, she affirmed, squeezing his hand as a wave of connection surged between them. They began to strategize with urgency. David took charge, rapidly organizing speakers for the upcoming rally. Mariah stepped back and took stock of those around her, the single mothers, the fathers, the elderly, the children, all dotted with anxious resolve and urgency. But just as hope began to anchor itself in her heart, she caught a glimpse of the prosecutor slipping into the crowd, eyes narrowed, weaving through faces to plant seeds of doubt, sowing divisions where unity flourished. Mariah knew this was going to be a battle not just against the law but against fear itself. Stay vigilant, she urged the group. We must not let her turn us against one another. Our strength lies in our unity. The group bonded over that promise, the reality of their intertwined destinies binding them tighter together. As they organized themselves further, a humble heart flowed through their assembly. Mariah's nerves slowly began to dissolve. With one voice, they would stand against the storm. The days passed quickly, and the energy surged like wildfire in the lead up to the rally. Signs were painted with words of hope and strength, each one a mark of determination against the struggle they had lived. On the day of the rally, Mariah stood at the front, her heart buoyed by those around her as sun broke through the clouds, illuminating the group's spirit. The park was a tapestry of colors and voices, laughter mingling with strong chants. Mariah had never experienced such a palpable sense of possibility. Each shared story echoed the fabric of their fight, embodying a unity that eclipsed the darkness of the prosecutor's influence. But as the rally peaked, a hush descended upon them. The prosecutor had arrived, flanked by law enforcement, their presence a stark reminder of the fight ahead. Muffled conversations rippled through the crowd, fear threatening to eclipse the day's bravery. Mariah felt the anxiety seep back in, clawing at her heart. Yet then, General Morgan stepped forward, his face stern but filled with purpose. "We've prepared for this moment, not with fear, but with truth. You see, the tide is turning, and we're ready to push back." That surge of solidarity echoed through Mariah. She stepped up bravely. "We stand not just for ourselves but for every family that feels crushed by a system that fails them." In that moment, every heart beat like thunder. And with a collective strength, they took a step forward together, defying the looming threats. The world may press down hard, but together, they could rise, lifting their community sky high. As the prosecutor's fierce glare intensified, Mariah smiled through her fear, knowing they were ready to ignite change once and for all. "Let us show them our truth," she cried as the crowd surged with renewed energy, hearts aligned, futures unfolding before them. And with that, the fight for justice erupted in a chorus of voices ringing far and wide, the light of their unity shining bright against any dark shadows that threatened them. This was their moment. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and feelings about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second to share.